Today is February 6th. My name is Colin, and this is the show. A town is generally accepted as any region bigger than a village and smaller than a city. It has its own government, name, and boundary, complete with marketplaces and people spread throughout the area. However, some towns have turned out to be very unique, including those built to look like other towns and those built and then not inhabited. Some towns have only one resident, while the residents of other towns all live under one roof. This is a list of 10 of the world's most unusual towns. Number 10. The Villages, Florida. The Villages is a town in Florida that was built for retired people. It covers an area larger than Manhattan and has over 100,000 inhabitants, most of them who drive around in golf carts. In fact, it holds the Guinness World Record for assembling the longest golf cart parade in the world, with 3,321 total golf carts. The town, where children are forbidden, is also home to controversies and scandals. Inhabitants are known to drive under the influence in golf carts, use illegal drugs, and engage in bar fights. Number 9. Busing am Hochrein, Germany. Busing am Hochrein is a German town in Switzerland. The town is separated from mainland Germany by a narrow strip of land, which measures 2,300 feet at its narrowest point. Considering its unusual location, Busingen am Hochrein is more of a Swiss town than a German one. It also enjoys public service from both Switzerland and Germany. It has a Swiss postal code and a German postal code, as well as 2 telephone codes. In case of an emergency, the Swiss or German police can be called in, although the Swiss police usually arrive first. Everybody living in Busing is allowed to work and own properties in Switzerland, even if they do not possess Swiss citizenship. And if a German citizen lives in Busing for more than 10 years, he or she receives a special status similar to Swiss citizenship. Number 8. Whittier, Alaska. Almost all of the 200-plus inhabitants of Whittier, Alaska live inside a single 14-story building called the Bigich Towers. The rest live in their vehicles, boats, or another similar building. Bigich Towers was built in 1956. Back then, it served as army barracks, but today it is a town complete with a police station, post office, store, church, video rental shop, playground, and health center, all located inside the building. The only way to access the town is either via sea or through a 2.5-mile, one-lane tunnel which has gates that open twice every hour, allowing cars in or out of the town. The tunnels close at night and do not open until the next day. Before 2001, the tunnel could not accommodate vehicles, and the only way to get into the town was a 60-mile train ride. Then, trains only ran a few times a week. Number 7. Colma, California. The town of Colma, California has more dead people than living people, with 1,500 living inhabitants and over 1.5 million dead inhabitants. The history of the town can be traced back to the gold rush of 1849, which led hundreds of thousands of people to migrate to nearby San Francisco. They brought diseases and subsequently death. By the 1880s, the 26 cemeteries in the town had been almost filled, and by the late 1880s, cemetery owners began constructing cemeteries in southern Colma because it was easily accessible. In March 1900, San Francisco's government banned new burials within the city. They said it was necessary because the land was too valuable to be used as cemeteries. Later on, in January 1914, cemetery owners were ordered to remove all bodies buried in San Francisco. Politicians said that the cemeteries spread disease, but the cemetery operators believed it was because of the rising cost of real estate. Nevertheless, the operators removed the bodies and moved them to Colma, leaving it sprawling with graveyards. Today, over 73% of Colma's land is destined to become cemeteries. Number 6. Minowi, Nebraska. Minowi was founded by Czech migrants in northeast Nebraska, and it has only one resident, 77-year-old Elsie Eller. Population-wise, Minowi is the smallest jurisdiction in the United States. Elsie runs the town's only tavern and library, which is made up of about 5,000 books owned by her late husband, Rudy. She also serves as the town's mayor, clerk, and treasurer. She also runs the council. In the 1930s, the town had a population of about 150 people, but by 2000, it had 2, Elsie and her husband, Rudy. Every year, Elsie pays tax to the town to maintain its 4 streetlights and provide other basic amenities. Several abandoned buildings in the town are covered with grass, slowly fading into obscurity, while others have collapsed. Number 5. Ordos, China. The city of Ordos has been called the largest ghost town in China. It was built to accommodate more than 1 million people. Unfortunately, only 2% of it was ever occupied and the rest was left to decay. The history of the town began more than 20 years ago during the coal rush of Mongolia. Investors soon began building apartments, hoping to rent them out. However, demand didn't keep pace with the builders, and many investors pulled out or went broke before the buildings were even completed. Today, streets are filled with incomplete houses. Even the completed buildings are hardly occupied thanks to their high prices. Many of the residents occupying the town are also leaving for elsewhere. In just 5 years, price per square foot fell from $1,100 to $470. To encourage people to come to the town, investors have reduced prices. Fresh graduates who move to the town to start a business are even given office space, internet connections, and several other utilities for free. Number 4. Longyearbyen, Norway. Longyearbyen, Spitsbergen in Norway is the northernmost city in the world. It contains the world's northernmost church, ATM, museum, post office, airport, and university. In Longyearbyen, dying is forbidden. Anyone found ill or dying is immediately flown by airplane or ship to another part of Norway before he or she passes away. And if someone suddenly dies there, they would not be buried. Dying is forbidden because bodies buried in the town's cemetery do not decompose thanks to its extreme cold weather. Scientists recently removed tissue from a man who died years ago and discovered that it contained traces of a deadly virus that caused an epidemic in 1917. Aside from not being allowed to die, citizens are also allowed to move around with high-powered rifles thanks to the over 3,000 polar bears hanging around. Cats are also forbidden because they pose a threat to the bird population. Number 3. Asymmetric Warfare Training Center at Fort A.P. Hill, Virginia. The Asymmetric Warfare Training Center in Virginia is an uninhabited town built by the U.S. Army to train its soldiers. The town is complete with a school, church, mosque, train station, and a 5-story embassy that's likely the tallest building in Virginia's Caroline County, where it's located. The school is built to replicate schools in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the subway resembles that of Washington, D.C. Heck, even the trains have the same logo. Costing $90.1 million to build, it is run by the U.S. Army Asymmetric Warfare Group. Another town similar to this is called Yodaville. It was built in the middle of the Arizona desert by the U.S. Air Force. The uninhabited town, built to look like towns in Iraq and Afghanistan, is meant to teach Air Force pilots how to carry out bombing runs. Number 2. Marloth Park, South Africa. Marloth Park is close to the Kruger National Park, which is filled with wildlife, including lions, hippopotamuses, and crocodiles. What makes the town unique is that, despite the dangers of having these wild animals close by, residents are not allowed to build fences around their house. The only fence that separates the town people from the park is a small 4-foot fence that was built more to keep the humans out of the park than to keep the animals in. It is not unusual to see the wild animals walking about the town. Baboons are known to enter the houses through windows to steal from the refrigerators, and giraffes and elephants are known to block the road. Lion attacks on humans are also not uncommon. Eyebrows were raised when a lion attacked, killed, and ate a burglar, fleeing with his loot, leaving only his head and a foot. Even after the deadly attack, most of the town's occupants want the lions to remain. Some say the burglar was shot while escaping and his corpse was eaten by lions. Others said the lions would serve as a form of crime control for the town, which was seeing a rise in burglary. Number 1. Hallstatt, China. The real Hallstatt is a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Austria. The Chinese Hallstatt is a similar mock-up town built in Guangdong Province, China. The town, which cost about $940 million to build, looks like the real Hallstatt, including its roads, church tower, and wooden houses. The town's construction was sponsored by a Chinese millionaire, and it caused quite a stir among the residents of the real Hallstatt who were not aware of the project. Residents of Austria's Hallstatt, including the mayor, later visited the town. They said that they were proud that their town was copied, but they did not like the way the Chinese went about it. They were supposed to have met with the owners of the buildings they copied and asked if they were comfortable with the idea of replicating the buildings elsewhere rather than just building them. The company that built the mock-up town, called Minmetals, had sent several of its workers to Austria's Hallstatt, where they took pictures of places to replicate. I hope you enjoyed my list of 10 of the world's most unusual towns, and thank you for watching.